Welcome to the Leadership Puzzle. I'm your host, Jeff Lupinacci, co-founder of Evolve HR Solutions. In this project, we're taking a journey to uncover the mysteries of leadership with some of the world's most accomplished leaders. In each episode, we discover the distinct insight from each of these great leaders, enabling us to refine our leadership skills and become more effective leaders. Piece by piece, together, we will assemble the leadership puzzle.
Ever since COVID, the debate between remote and in-person work has raged on. Most people take one side or the other, with the compromise of being hybrid. Now, more and more corporations are calling their employees back to the office and giving employees a choice: relocate or find a new job. Now, the reality is companies have leveraged remote employees for as long as I've been in the workforce and certainly longer. But there definitely is a trick and a secret sauce on how to make that remote work environment work for you. Our next guest, Wendy Cocke, is the founder of Engineering Leadership Solutions. Now, before she started her company, she learned the secret sauce of working remotely in a Fortune 500 company. She learned so many tips and tricks that she actually wrote a book, a best-selling book, Making Flex Work. And so I'm excited to have Wendy join us to talk about flexible work, remote work, and how to ensure that you are keeping a great personal connection as well as growing your career. So join me for a great conversation. Welcome, everyone. We have Wendy with us today. Thanks for joining me. It's great to have you on the Leadership Puzzle.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks.
All right. Well, when we first really met, we realized that we were both at Kimberly Clark at the same time, though we never actually crossed paths.
It's a small world to be a KCer, and yet a very big world to be a KCer.
Yeah. Well, now you're running your own company. You've got a couple of very successful best-selling books. I'd love for you to just give the high-level journey of how you got to where you are today.
Yes. So, I was raised in a small business, in a family business. And Jeff, I don't know how many of your audience members were raised in a family business, but it's very simple. If you're in the family, you work in the business, right? So my earliest job in the family business was in quality control department when I was a toddler. At that point in time, my parents sold dry cleaning bags, those branded bags that they encourage you to put your laundry in so that you will not take your dry cleaning to somewhere else because you'll be too embarrassed to drop it off.
Right.
So when a new shipment of bags would come in, my dad would put me inside of them and shake it up and down. When I ripped through the seams, then we rejected the lot of bags. If not,
that's great.
Then they were good to sell. So they put me to work as a toddler in the department, in quality. So I have sort of always thought of myself in a small business mindset my whole career. And that's actually where the second book came from. So Reimagine Your Work is around helping people see themselves as the product they sell. And if you're working on that product and you're trying to be the best product you can be, it doesn't matter who you're working for. You are going to be an excellent employee, an excellent leader. You're going to be someone that people want to work with and want to have on their team. So it goes through that. That's the end of the journey, right? So the beginning was being in a small business. The end was putting that into paper for that journey. But in between, I went to school at Georgia Tech. I got a chemical engineering degree. The plan had been to get a chemical engineering undergrad and biomedical engineering master's because I was just old enough that there weren't a lot of places where you could get a biomedical engineering undergrad. My husband and my children, they call that the 1900s. My son tells everybody I graduated from college at the turn of the century, and I expect that I should be wearing a powdered wig, and he just means like before 9/11.
Before he was born.
Before he was born, the turn of the century, the 1900s. But while I was involved in college, I got introduced to a recruiter at Kimberly Clark. And she told me about all these really great jobs I could get as a chemical engineer that would still allow me to work with the types of products that I wanted to work on as a biomedical engineer. So I threw away that plan of getting a master's and jumped right into an R&D role. I spent about a decade in R&D and then had the opportunity to move over and do supply chain manufacturing, leadership and strategy, mostly in the healthcare world. So for 20 years, I just sort of moved up this ladder in healthcare. Along the way, I had 2 kids and got married, all the things you normally do in a 20-year career.
Yeah.
And when I was pregnant with my first child, I very much found that I was drowning. I am a type A person. I want to be good at everything that I do. And I could not balance being a wife, being a mother, and being an employee. Everybody in my life would probably have given me a B+ in all of those areas, but it wasn't an A, so it wasn't good enough for me.
But I think that's what a lot of people feel now, especially.
Yeah, there's so many parts of our lives, and we want to be that A student. We at the end of the day, we all are just that kindergartner that wants the gold star and wants their work hung up on the refrigerator and wants somebody to give them the attaboy. And I felt like I was failing. Kimberly Clark took a risk on this technical girl and let her go part-time in an R&D role as a project leader for a virtualization project in their medical device business at the time. And that changed the entire trajectory of my career because I flourished part-time because I was able to feel like a success. And it gave me those boundaries. The difference in full-time and 32 hours is so much more than 8 hours. And so it freed me to be able to say no to things that I didn't feel empowered to say no to. As a salaried full-time employee, it gave me the ability to put some constraints on what was my working time and what wasn't. And it also gave me the freedom to really work flexibly. And in a time when this was pre-pandemic, we still had to plug computers into the wall to get internet.
Yeah.
Right? Houses didn't have Wi-Fi then. And from that point forward, my son is now about to turn 14. And I have not worked full-time since then. But that's where Making Flex Work came from. So the first book I published, is called Making Flex Work. It is taking all of my engineering skills and putting them on me as the machine so I can optimize my work so I can be at the right place at the right time to do the right.
That's great.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And then in a full circle moment in 2022, I was able to come back to Georgia Tech and join the biomedical engineering department as faculty. So I serve as a professor of the practice there, teaching biomedical engineering students how work works. When my 18-year-old self excited that I made it to what I thought I wanted to be when I grew up.
Yeah, I adjunct for my alma mater, Baylor University, and so I can understand just the joy of being able to go back to who helped shape your career and then give back to the students, the next generation.
It is so much fun, and I can't believe it's a job.
That's great. So you mentioned, but you also now have a company, I think, Engineering Leadership Solutions. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Engineering Leadership Solutions is a company. It's an LLC that I put together that supports people in companies who want to think about work differently by helping them with processes and best practices. So it is continuous improvement, program and project management, KPIs and management dashboards, things that help leaders become better leaders. Think about the way that they are engaging with their team, because what we measure is what we care about.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you have a top 10. If you're asking about 10 other things, those are your priorities. That's at least from your team's perspective. That's your priority. And so I have myself and a small army of really brilliant employees who do contract program and project management, go in and do management consulting and continuous improvement.
Now, have you seen AI is the big moniker for the last year or so. Has that technology advancement, has that changed the way that you think about the work that you and your company does?
Not yet. And the reason I say not yet is Today, there is still so much nuance in exactly understanding what some company thinks they want versus what they actually need, that being able to load it in and use an AI system just doesn't quite do it. Do I think in a few years? Maybe. What we do and what we really pride ourselves on is really customizing. We're not an out of the box solution. We can from a programming project management standpoint, we can go in and use very sophisticated tools. We can also show your team how to be effective on Excel because they've never done it before. And everything in between. And as a part of that, there's a lot of partnering with clients to figure out where are they on that journey to get them the right tool. And so AI just has not caught up with that.
Yeah, got it. No, that makes sense. I'd like to spend a little bit of time on your two books
Sure.
before we get into some leadership discussion. So your first book, Making Flex Work, the title seems to be really, really timely. Yeah, love it. Given that there's a big debate that goes on. I guess the U.S. loves debates now, and being on one side or the other, is it in person? Is it, fully remote? Is it hybrid? But you built out, really a way for people to find the right balance in their life and be able to go to companies and say, hey, let me find this balance so that I can have it all, basically. So is there one or two key, topics or key attributes that you'd like the listeners to understand about how they can make flex work for them in whatever their context is?
Certainly. So I'm going to approach it two different ways. One as the individual and then one as the leader. We're going to start first with the leader. And I will say that being a leader with a flexible workforce is much more difficult than being a leader in an everybody comes into the exact same physical location everyday workforce. It just requires you to up your leadership game. You've got to be better at communicating clearly what it is that you want. You've got to be better knowing in advance when you want something as opposed to just in time decision making. And you've got to be able to let go of the need to check all the time. That is terrifying. As a parent, I can tell you it's terrifying when I let my kids go out on their own and do things or they get to make their decisions. It's also terrifying in the workforce. So from a leader standpoint, it's okay to be scared. But just like parents, we can't stifle our children because it's scary to let them grow and develop. As leaders, we can't stifle our team because we're scared. That's the first piece. On the individual side, I spent half my career leading teams, and most of them were dynamic remote teams, or at least one person was remote on the team, or one person was in a different sort of situation. And having to customize it is a way to let everybody shine. So here's what I tell the individual. To the individual, figure out what allows you to meet the commitments that you have, and then build a business case around why, when you do that, you should be able to do it the way we build business cases for all sorts of things, but we really struggle thinking about building a business case for ourselves. So I have a 4-step method called the evaluation method, EVANL, that walks through how to build that. E is every hour counts. This is about understanding where you are currently spending your time today. What are you doing? When are you working? When are you not working? When are you half working and half playing around on your phone? When are you half working and half working in another meeting? So are you double working or are you half working? Hard to say. The second is V in evaluation. So that's valuing optimized. This is really where the engineering comes in. Let's look at what's on our plate and what is taking us a lot of time or things that we're not doing efficiently. And let's look for tools or training or mentoring or coaching that can help us do them more efficiently. As a people leader, I loved it when people brought to me what their career development plan should be.
Yeah.
So if you look at your day and you say, I am weak in this area, I need training or I need a skill, and you can bring that to your leader, you've done some of their work for them.
Right. And leaders appreciate that.
The leaders appreciate that because good leaders want to develop their team, and we're constantly thinking about what does this person need. If they can tell us what they need, even better.
Yeah.
That's the V. The A is assessing the expectation, especially in a dynamic work environment that we have right now coming out of the pandemic and with everyone trying to figure out what does normal look like in a post-pandemic world, looking at your responsibilities and critically saying, do they bring me value or do they bring the company value? And if they do not bring value to you or the company, we should be asking, why are we doing it?
Makes sense.
And it could have been that it made sense before. It also could have made sense for you before and it brought you value, but you've now grown in your career. It actually makes more sense to let somebody more junior do it so that they can grow in their career instead of holding on to it selfishly because it's easy and it brings us some sort of. So that's the A.
Yeah, we get something done and we feel like, oh, I get to check that off.
And it was easy because we've been doing it for a dozen years. So that's the A. And then the L is a continuous improvement method. It's leveraging small changes. This is in engineering why you would turn a dial just ever so slightly instead of turning it all the way up. It's this idea of experimenting or playing with your time. What if I look at my current state and I realize that I'm always skipping my workout in the evening because I'm too tired or I run out of time? What if just once I try to work out in the morning? Just once. Did it work? Did I like it or not? If I like it, I can do more of it. If I don't like it, I don't ever have to do any. What if I plan my one-on-ones over my lunch so that we can have a different experience for that discussion? Does that work for my team? And so I should do that more? Or does it not work for me and my team? So I shouldn't do it again. You make the change small enough, you don't have to ask for permission.
Yeah.
You can just try it. And once you've finished these 4 steps, now you can go to your leader and say, I have data. I've turned my time into data and I know what is going to be important for the company and I know how I can do it. And here's where I've even tried it. So I can prove that it's going to be okay.
And I know most companies love data.
Yeah, work data. And I suggest that everybody, when they pitch a 30, 60, or 90-day trial, whatever you think you can get. Because then your leader is not having to say yes right away.
Yeah.
They get to collect data.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, call it a pilot if you need to.
Right. Yeah. We do this for so many business processes already. We just don't do it for people.
Right. No, I love it. I love the model. An interesting notion around, kind of flex, and it probably plays more in the remote employee more than, kind of that hybrid space. But I suspect you've your fair share of remote work and whatnot. How would you approach the kind of not being seen scenario where, the manager or the manager's manager, gives someone a really juicy assignment because they happen to be, down the hall and they run into them when they're thinking about a project. You don't get that when you're remote. How would you?
You don't get it without being intentional if you're remote.
Yeah.
I have a whole section of Making Flex Work called How to Be There When You're Not There, specifically to address this. And there are ways to build the same connection virtually. If I had written this book 10 years ago, there wouldn't be. So here are a couple of tips. If you are a never there employee, fully remote, mostly remote, you've got to turn your camera on. Nobody cares, by the way, what you look like. But when they see your face, our brains actually react to that differently than a voice. And so if you are the one on their screen, you are there. We're there, whether or not you're there.
Right.
The other is never let that time at the beginning of a virtual meeting go to waste. You think about a conference room, as people are coming in and out of a conference room, we do not walk into a physical conference room, say nothing to no one, sit down and do other work. And then at some point somebody says, okay, the meeting starts and we all start. That's not what happens in real life. In real life, you walk in, you see someone, you address them by name, ask them how they're doing. There's a lot of chit chat that happens before somebody finally says, okay, now we're going to get started. You have to do that and leverage that when you are a virtual employee. As a leader, I always would go in and say good morning to every little virtual circle on the meeting.
Right.
And by the way, in that 3 minutes where everybody's kind of shuffling in and out, and I got to get a drink, or hold on one more second, or my IT stuff isn't working. Right? I would always ask everybody tell me something good that's happened to you since the last time we were together, personally or professionally.
That's a great idea.
It gives people the opportunity to have that chit chat and not waste that 5 minutes, because people that are calling in, once they realize the meetings don't start until 5 minutes after, now they're not coming in until 5 minutes after. So now the meeting doesn't start until 7 minutes after. Then they realize it doesn't start until 7, and it just keeps propagating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you pop in late, people are talking, you assume it's about the meeting. So it actually changes the environment as well, where people are encouraged to come to your meetings on time because they know they're going to be talking.
Right. And relationship building.
I had one time I asked about something good. One of the guys on the other end of the phone said, my daughter just got her driver's license. And we were like, that's very exciting. But that's not the fun part of the story. Okay, bring it on. And he said, she forgot which one was the brake and which one was the gas. And she was backing out of our driveway and she smashed my new car into the neighbor's mailbox.
Oh, geez.
And I said, that is not my definition of good. I'm not sure how this conversation, how are you tying this together? And he said, well, what's really good is that the neighbor is not mad and their mailbox is not destroyed.
Well, let's look at the positive side of something that could have been much worse. That's awesome.
I had no idea that he was married with teenage children, right? So in that little soundbite, we learned so much about that we can build that relationship.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. We could probably spend the whole time talking about making Flex work. But I encourage the listeners to go buy that. It's a great read, and you'll learn lots of great things. So I want to kind of pivot to your newest book, which is reimagining your work, Amazon #1 bestseller.
It is, yeah.
Which is a great accomplishment in and of itself. So it's what I like about that book is it gives us a blueprint and a fresh perspective of how to look at our career. So, what are those couple of key points that you want our listeners to really get out of this book, especially as so many people are stepping back and going, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do when I grow up? Basically.
That's right. So the framework of this book is that you are the product. And what I want people to know is that their unique past defines their unique future. All those old career books have a ladder on the front. And a ladder, that straight line, is no longer going to give you the opportunities and the experiences you need to propel your career. It is much more like a map these days, where you get to decide, do I want to take the direct path? Do I want to go by the lake on the way? Do I want the one with the steep elevation, or do I want the lazy walk around? All of those are okay. And you get to make those choices because you're the product and you're running your own business, even if you're working for someone else, because the business is the business of you and you are what you do. So what are your benefits and features? What are you doing to invest in your product development? What are you doing to ensure quality control? And if you're a leader, how are you setting quality expectations? Because your team is now a part of your brand.
Interesting.
So in there, I do have, we don't have time for it today, but it's a super fun exercise where if your listeners are interested in figuring out what their personal brand is, I encourage everyone to use their social media networks to define their brand. So I have a fun 4-week adventure through your social media where each week you ask a different question to your network. So here are the questions. First question is, what one word would you use to describe me? It's going to be powerful because they're going to have to choose one word. And I love a word cloud, so you can get all of it, put it in a word cloud, start some trends. You can also look at outliers. Like, why did Jeff say that one word and nobody else said that? That's interesting. What is my relationship with Jeff that's different than my relationship with everyone else?
Sure.
Second week, you ask, what am I best at? This is what the person thinks of when they think I need Wendy for, right? They're going to be like, what are you the go-to person for? It's going to help you unlock a superpower that you might not even know that you have. Because people might know you for things that are different than what you think people know you for.
Interesting.
That's where the value is.
Yeah, for sure.
So the third week, you're going to ask, what is your favorite memory with me? This one engages an entirely different audience because this is the people that like to tell a story. They weren't compelled by one word or something more technical. They want to like share a memory, story. They are already your connector. Do be aware that you might not get as many of these on your like social media feed, but you will get a lot of emails and direct and private messages. Because if their story also incriminates them, they might not want it out in the world.
Right.
That's okay. You're now top of mind. And once you have had that private conversation with them, you can ask them the other question.
Sure.
And then the last piece is on your own. And you can do it throughout the time, which is what comes easily for you that is difficult for most people. What are things that you do easily that you watch other people struggle with? When you put all those pieces together, you can figure out what is the brand that you already have. And do you like that brand or do you not like that brand? And what do you need to turn up or turn down to hone it into what you want?
Oh, interesting. Now you just have to hope that you have a decent enough social network. Otherwise, I guess you're going to your family and friends.
You're going to go to your family and friends. I said this last week at the Society of Women Engineers. I was lucky enough to be the keynote speaker at their local conference in Baltimore last week to about 850, 900 people. And I had one woman come up to me afterward and she said, I am not on social media. What do I do? And I said, that's okay. You still have a network. You're going to email them, call them, text them. It's just easier if you only have to do it once and it just populates into everybody's social media.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But you have a network of people. You just have to go. If
yeah,
you don't,
everyone has one.
Go find a network. Maybe that's the step one.
That may be the first thing to do is if you don't do and if you don't have, but if you have family or friends, start there, right? I mean,
people you've worked with in college, roommates. I mean, you've had people in your life.
Yeah,
go talk to
them. That can answer those questions. Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, so get the book, Reimagine Your Work. You won't be sorry. So all that's just really, really informative. I want to pivot a little bit into leadership and your personal leadership. This podcast is called The Leadership Puzzle, and we try to tease out what is that unique puzzle piece for each leader that has helped them be successful in their career. So, if you think about your career from working at a Fortune 100 company to now owning your own company and writing books, what do you think that leadership attribute that has made you successful in everything that you've done so far?
Definitely authentic relationships. There is absolutely nothing that I have done on my own. There is not a single decision, promotion that I've ever done that wasn't influenced or supported by someone else. In building those authentic relationships, really meeting people where they are, maintaining those connections as we grew up. Those people that I was friends with in college and what I call a baby engineer right out of school, 20 years later are some very powerful leaders. You don't just become friends with people who have a lot of influence overnight. You hone those relationships in your 20s and you hold on to people who are like-minded and have the same drive and have the same sort of desires that you have and are willing to put in the same amount of work because their integrity says this is how you do it. So you find that group and grow with, and then you bring other people in, and then you figure out, I'm a connector of people. I love doing that. I love studying people. I love those relationships. There is no other way in my mind to be successful because leadership is so much more than numbers and metrics.
Well, I think it goes a long way that says, your networks are really your net worth in a lot of ways, and your character and those relationships are invaluable, and that's a lot of times what separates someone that's really really successful from someone that's has a okay career but doesn't thrive.
And you have to be intentional, because in no annual performance review do we ask you, like, who are your relationships and how are you nurturing? So when you think about it, have to be intentional with it. As a leader, I always had a 30, 60, 90-day onboarding plan for anybody that joined my team. And in the 30 days, it was about making sure your IT worked and making sure you knew what meetings to show up to and your calendar was right, your work. At the end of those 30 days, I would give them their next 30 days. And in those next 30 days, I would ask them to start really having one-on-ones with people, understanding cross-functional relationships, understanding where their work fits in the big picture. Between 60 and 90, they were not allowed to come to me on their 90 days until they had done what I called finding their people. And I don't need to know who your people are, but I need to know that you have found people that you want to have coffee with, people that you want to go have lunch with, people that you want to build a relationship with beyond the tactical day-to-day work. And so at the end of that 90 days, they knew I was going to say, have you found your people? And what are you doing to build that relationship? For them, it was about being able to become part of the family. I wanted them to plant roots. I talk about people who are apartment people versus house people. Apartment people keep their plants in pots. They keep their plants in pots so that they can take their plants with them. People who own homes put plants in the ground because they plan on being there a while. So I need them to have their people so they'll get roots. They'll feel comfortable potting their plants in my company.
I've moved a number of times in my life, probably more than I should, but I get that finding the people is so important, and if you don't, then it's really easy to leave. I've lived a lot of places, and it's so easy to leave someplace if you haven't found your people. Even if you buy a house and put the plants in the ground, if you don't find your people, you're gonna jump. And so as a leader, I think that is really really great wisdom to say, go find the people that you're gonna really connect with and have a relationship that goes beyond just the day-to-day work.
It's hard to leave. It's easy to leave a job, and it is hard to leave relationships. So the faster as a leader you can get somebody to build those relationships, the more likely they are to not just think of this as a job, but to think of it as something that's bigger than a job.
Great. I love your leadership puzzle piece. So I want to have a little bit of fun as we kind of come towards our end. This is the lightning round. So I'm just going to ask you a quick question, and then boom, you just whatever the top of mind, right? So, what is your favorite hobby?
Napping.
Napping. Love it. If if you had one superpower, what would it be?
If I had one superpower, I would be able to turn back time to go and fix mistakes that drive me crazy.
That's a new one on me. All right. Best meal you've ever had in your life?
Best meal I've ever had in my life. So my daughter has now learned how to make my grandmother's homemade biscuits and gravy. So I think she makes it better than my Southern grandmother used to make it. So I'm going to give her credit.
Okay. I'm going to come into your house next time she's making it. What is the most exciting place that you've traveled to?
So for me, travel is where my people are. And so we go to the beach, to the Gulf, and we just zone out with no internet for a week. So I don't know that everybody else would call it exciting, but it's exactly what I need to recharge.
That's awesome. Right now is a time of we like to give our guests a opportunity to highlight a organization that they're a part of, or a nonprofit, or a cause. And I think you have one that you're actively engaged with.
Yeah, so I am passionate about women's and children's causes. And we happen to be recording on March 8th, which is International Women's Day. So I am going to pick the Society of Women Engineers to highlight. This is the organization that has been a part of my life since before I was a student at Georgia Tech. The absolute best decision I ever made in my career was to join Georgia Tech Society of Women Engineers during freshman orientation before I even started at Georgia Tech. It's where I got the lead for my first job. It is where I practiced skills before I would ever have been given them in a Fortune 100 company, right? I was running big budgets, big projects, and leading big teams well before I would have been allowed to do that at a Fortune 100 company. And so many of my personal board of directors, those women come from the Society of Women Engineers. And just a plug for your audience, if you're a people leader and you are looking for a way to invest in your people, Society of Women Engineers is an amazing value. Membership is $100 a year. And
Wow.
It gives you access to all of their online training. It gives your team access to conferences and to speakers and to a variety of things. I mean, there is no better value than that. You can't get training for $100 for your team. And it is here. And if you haven't figured out that they are also the best place to recruit technical women, they have, this past year, they had 17,000 women in LA at their annual conference.
Wow.
So if you are looking for a diversity hire, 17,000 technical women all in one place, that's pretty powerful.
No, that's great. So if you're a woman engineer or you're hiring for women engineer, then check out Society for Women Engineer. That's awesome.
That's great.
Thanks for bringing that out. All right, so I have one last question for you. What advice would you give our listeners on your leadership strategy to help grow your own leadership capabilities, whether you're leading a small team or a large team?
Never stop investing in your own R&D. Constantly be looking for ways to improve. I believe that what people want in a leader is a leader who wants to be a good leader. I believe that people are happy to work for a mediocre leader who is on their way to greatness because they watch them invest in themselves. It's as important as working for a great leader. And by the way, if you're on that leadership journey and you are vulnerable with your team and you're telling them how you're investing, they will support you because they want to be able to say they knew you when. When people say you're a great leader and they say, oh yeah, but 5 years ago when I worked for her, that was not the way. I've seen her grow and they get to be a part of that story. It's even more powerful.
No, that's great advice. Well, Wendy, this has been just so much fun talking with you today. Thanks again for spending some time with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
What a great conversation with Wendy. It certainly is timely, and the tips and tricks that she shared are invaluable for those who do work in a remote environment. If you are enjoying the podcast, I encourage you to like, share, and comment on the links below. Join us next time as we begin a series on talent. And we will be bringing experts together from all different fields on the value and importance of looking at your people, your talent, as a competitive advantage. Until next time, this is the Leadership Puzzle.